For a moment, I couldn't move. The last line from outside still hung in the air of the warehouse like smoke. That's the building. He won't have gone far. The engine of the car idled, a low, expensive hum that vibrated through the cracked concrete floor. Beside me, Finch was a taut line of muscle and breath, one eye to the gap in the boards, his hand clamped on my sleeve. "Don't breathe like that," he whispered. "You're fogging the glass." I hadn't realized I was that close to the broken window. I forced myself to lean back an inch. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like the boards should rattle with it. Outside, the man with the folder hadn't moved far from the curb. The street lamp cut a pale circle around him, leaving the car itself mostly shadow. His coat looked like the kind you never wash yourself. He flipped the folder open with one hand, the pages catching the light. "Hubert," he said. The sound of my name out there, on that kind of voice, made my skin crawl. Not shouted, not questioned, just stated like he was ticking off an item on a checklist. Finch's fingers dug into my sleeve. "Back," he mouthed again. I didn't move. "You can stay where you are," the man continued as if we were already talking. "I understand the instinct, but you should know it doesn't help much. Not at this stage." He turned a page. Even from this distance, I could see blocks of printed text, lines, bullet points. My name sat in the middle of it like a stain. "You're not easy to miss," he went on. "First night by the river. You sat too straight, watched too much. You thought you were invisible, but you stared like someone who still expects answers." I felt suddenly cold. The river. Clay. The scream under the bridge. The broken cart. "I had someone watch the church on Maple the next day," he said. "Sandwiches at noon. You arrived late, still testing whether you belonged in that line. You talked to a boy in a ruined hoodie. Finch, I believe his name is." I flinched. Finch went completely still beside me. "I won't insult your intelligence by calling this coincidence," the man said. "You know better. You've always known better, Hubert. That's why you're here in the first place." A floorboard creaked behind us. "Who is that?" A low voice, rough with sleep and cigarettes, came from the darker corner of the warehouse. "He sounds like Detz." I twisted my head. A shape shifted on the pallet stack near the back wall. Someone sat up, shoulders hunched, jacket silhouette familiar even in the murk. "Clay," I whispered. He rubbed a hand over his face, eyes catching the weak lantern light. The bruise on his cheek had gone from purple to a sickly green-yellow. "You weren't the only one Finch dragged in last night," he muttered. "Thought I'd get 3 hours without sermons. Guess not." Outside, the man took a few steps closer to the building. Not enough to be directly under our window, but close enough that we could see the shine of his shoes. "You know me, Hubert," he said. "Even if you don't remember my face. We've sat in the same meetings, passed each other in the same hallways. You signed documents I put on your desk. You've read my name. In emails you didn't fully understand." My stomach dropped. Emails, hallways, documents. He smiled slightly, the kind of smile that never touched the eyes. "You, on the other hand, you were never required to be memorable. That's one of the reasons you were useful. And one of the reasons you are now, unfortunately, a problem." I swallowed, throat dry. "He knows where I worked," I breathed. "Of course he does," Finch hissed. "You think he pulled your name out of a hat?" Clay swung his legs off the pallet, bare feet brushing dust. "Is he alone?" he asked. I looked again. I could just make out a driver's shape behind the wheel of the sedan. The back windows were still tinted dark. There could have been a whole boardroom in there, watching. 2 for sure, I whispered. "Maybe more." "Too many," Clay said quietly, "for a conversation we didn't ask to have." Outside, the man closed the folder. The sound of it, soft as it was, made my shoulders jerk. "Let me save you some time," he said, projecting his voice just enough to carry to the building. "You're already making a list, I imagine. Questions, grievances, clever retorts. You always did. You were always more careful with your words than your choices." He shifted his weight, glanced up at the row of boarded windows, not zeroing in on ours, but sweeping them all. "You're asking yourself who I am," he went on, "in the simple terms. Am I a debt collector? A policeman? A well-meaning social worker? A faint hint of amusement colored that last one. I'm none of those. Those people are loud. I am not loud, Hubert. I am preventative. Clay's hand found my ankle in the dimness, squeezing once, his version of listen. On your first night, the man said, you watched a man get hurt under a bridge. You chose not to walk away. That told me something. On your second day, you went to the soup kitchen, the library, a certain abandoned supermarket. You found people. You listened to them. That told me more. He sighed, almost theatrically. You are predictable in the ways that make you dangerous. Finch leaned in close to my ear. He's not here to help you, he whispered. He's here to put you back in a box. Or in the ground. Same difference. What does he want? I asked, barely moving my lips. Not to negotiate, Clay murmured from behind us. Men like that don't come to ask who you are. They come to confirm you're still exactly where they plotted you on their map. The man took a step back toward the car. I don't need you to step outside tonight, he said. I don't even need you to admit you hear me. I only need you to understand one thing. He paused, letting the quiet stretch. I know your spots, he said. The river, the church, the underpass, the loading dock, this building. None of them were hard to find. You weren't hard to follow. The city shrank when you fell out of it, Hubert. Fewer options, fewer places to disappear. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. He listed them like addresses from a report. It's late, he added, almost gently. You're tired. You think your worst day is behind you. It rarely is. Sleep if you can. Tomorrow, we'll give you an opportunity to correct what started before you decided to run. He tapped the folder against his leg once, like a teacher stacking papers after a lesson. Or don't, he said. Running is, after all, the one decision you've committed to. He turned, walked back toward the car with unhurried steps. The driver's door clicked. The engine revved slightly as he opened the back door and slid in out of sight. The sedan pulled away from the curb as smoothly as it had arrived, taillights smearing red across the cracked pavement before vanishing around the corner. The warehouse exhaled. For a long moment, none of us moved. The only sounds were my own breathing, too loud in my ears, and the soft drip of water somewhere deeper in the building. Then Finch let out a breath that almost counted as a laugh. Well, he muttered, that's new. Clay's hand released my ankle. You didn't tell me you were bringing ghosts from offices, he said. I thought we were just dealing with the usual street monsters. I didn't know he existed, I said, my voice scraping. I mean, maybe I saw his name, but you never thought about who put the papers on your desk, Clay finished, or who took them away. Finch moved away from the window, motion suddenly efficient. He snatched up the small lantern, clicked it off, plunging us into thicker dark. We're leaving, he said. Now? I asked. He just left. That car left, Finch corrected. He doesn't need to sit out front all night when he's already charted your route. Spots, remember? He's not chasing you with a net. He's rearranging the maze. Clay stood up slowly, testing his weight on each foot. He's right, he said. Once men like that know where you sleep, that place is done. It's like burning a safe house in a war. I thought this was your shared spot, I said. You said there's rotating membership. He shrugged one shoulder. Then we rotate. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else as I slung my backpack on. The familiar weight was suddenly a liability, proof, evidence. How long was he watching? I asked. Finch snorted softly. If he saw you by the river on your first night, longer than you think. Long enough to know you went from desk to street. Long enough to learn your walk. He said he knows me, I said. From meetings, emails. I don't remember his face. Of course you don't, Clay said. He remembers all of you. That's his job. You were just another chair in a room to fill. That used to be your job. A bitter laugh tried to escape my throat and came out as a cough instead. Which way? I asked Finch. Not the front, he replied, and not the door you used last time. He led the way through the shadowed interior, past hulks of forgotten machinery and collapsed pallets. The air grew colder as we moved away from the street side, the city's light thinning to faint gray strips between boards high up. We reached a back wall where the brick was cracked in a jagged line. Finch crouched, feeling along it with his fingers, until he found a section of corrugated metal leaned casually against the base. He tipped it aside, revealing a narrow gap, just barely wider than a body. "Maintenance access," he said, "for when they still cared if this place fell down. Don't snag your backpack, office boy." He slid through first, shoulders compressing. Then Clay, grunting as his bruised ribs protested. I squeezed in last, the brick scraping my jacket, my heart pounding loud in the small space. On the other side, we came out into a dead-end alley, hemmed in by fences and the blank back of another building. "Left," Finch whispered, already moving. "Stay low, no talking." We threaded through a gap in the fence, where the wire had been cut and bent back on itself. Then into another alley. Then a side street where the streetlights flickered irregularly. The city here felt different. Less like the emptiness around the supermarket, more like a neglected borderland between respectable and written off. By the time Finch finally slowed, my lungs burned and my legs shook. Clay was breathing in short, tight bursts, one arm wrapped around his torso. We stopped beneath an overhanging fire escape. The metal stairs rusted and flaking. Above us, a couple of windows glowed faintly, too high for voices to carry. "Here for now," Finch said. "Not ideal, but better than where we were, since someone's fan club learned the address." I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the cold ground. My backpack thumped beside me. "He said he'll give me an opportunity tomorrow," I muttered, "to correct what started before I ran." What does that even mean? "It means he thinks you owe him something," Clay said, easing himself down more carefully. "Information, silence, maybe both. And what if I don't give it?" I asked. Finch tilted his head. Then he stops talking from the sidewalk and starts talking from closer places, like doorways or the passenger seat of a cop car parked where you sleep. A bitter taste filled my mouth. "Sleep," Clay said quietly. "You won't, not really. But close your eyes anyway. The city doesn't get less cruel just because you're tired." After that, I asked, "Where do we go in the morning?" He smiled faintly, humorless. "Away from the spots he already listed." I lay back, backpack under my head, the fire escape a black cage against the patch of sky I could see. My body ached with exhaustion, but sleep came in torn pieces, ripped by flashes of memory. The office hallway, the eviction, Clay's jacket on Tank's shoulders, the man's voice saying my name like he'd practiced it. Somewhere in the night, I heard a car door slam in the distance. Every muscle in me flinched. I didn't know when I crossed the thin line into morning. It felt less like waking up, and more like discovering I'd never fully gone under. When I opened my eyes, the sky was a pale, washed-out blue, the kind that made the buildings look taller and meaner. The air had that wet chill that seeped through clothes and skin. Finch was already standing, hands in his pockets, watching the mouth of the alley. Clay sat with his back to the wall, eyes half closed, his breath fogging in short puffs. "Congratulations," Finch said without turning around. "You made it to another day." "Is it still day 3? I muttered. "It's whatever number you want to give it," he said. "Out here, days blend. Nights tattoo themselves on you. Names show up with folders. You get the idea." My back protested as I pushed myself up. Gravel stuck to my jacket. "Did you sleep?" I asked him. He shrugged. "Enough to stay standing. That's the bar." "Do we go back to the warehouse?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "No," Clay said firmly. "You don't repeat yourself after you've been seen. That's rule, I don't know, somewhere in the top 3. "Where then?" I asked. "Depends on what you want to do about your new friend," Finch said. He finally faced me, eyes darker than the shadows around us. "You can spend your day trying to avoid him, or we can spend it figuring out why a man with that kind of tailoring thinks a ghost from the account department is worth tailing through trash alleys." "I wasn't in accounting," I said automatically. He smirked. "Whatever. Same species." "I didn't do anything," I said, the words coming out faster than I intended. I did reports, numbers. I wasn't important." He said that himself. Yeah, Finch said. And yet here we are. Important enough for him to list your walking pattern like a weather report. Clay tapped his fingers against his knee. Go somewhere public, he said. Somewhere he'd rather not make a scene. The library, I suggested. He found us there yesterday. And didn't come in, Clay pointed out. Libraries have cameras, people, rules. Men like him prefer places where the only witnesses are the ones nobody believes. Soup kitchen? I asked. Finch made a face. This early? You'll just stand in a line, feeling like a statistic. But sure, we can start that way. Better than sitting here waiting for your fan to send you a love letter. We walked. The city in the morning had a different rhythm. Delivery trucks, people in uniforms, kids dragging backpacks to school. Most of them didn't look at us. The ones who did it quickly, like eye contact might be contagious. At the soup kitchen, the line was shorter than the day before, but still a line. The same volunteer with the red scarf handed out trays, her eyes tired but kind. I wondered if she recognized me, or if men like me blurred together in her head, the way people in business casual had blurred in mine. Halfway down the line, a bulletin board sagged under the weight of papers. Job training flyers, shelter notices, another missing poster. I tried not to look, but my gaze snagged on the word anyway. Missing. Different face this time. Younger. Hair buzzed short. Vague smile. The date under the photo was from a few weeks back. Does anyone ever take those down? I asked under my breath. Sometimes, Clay said. Usually when they find a body. Or when someone gives up. It doesn't bother you that he knew you were here yesterday? Finch asked me. That he could list it like an item in his planner. Of course it bothers me, I snapped. What am I supposed to do, stop eating? That's one way to avoid being followed, he said. Not the fun one. We got our trays. The food tasted like salt and powdered patience. I barely tasted any of it. On the way out, someone brushed past me a little too close. A man with a hood pulled low. His shoulder bumped mine. Instinctively, I reached for my backpack strap, feeling for its weight. Still there. By the door, I glanced back just once. The missing poster fluttered in a draft from the opening door. For a second, the paper folded, obscuring the face. Underneath, the printed contact number blurred. A thought slid unwelcome through my head. Someone printed those. Someone tracked those disappearances. Somewhere in someone's folder, those faces existed as data points. Risk assessments, reports, like me. Outside, the air felt sharper, fewer people, more space for the city to watch. Library? Clay asked. I thought you avoid places with security, I said to Finch. Security guards don't like paperwork, he said. If your friend wants to talk to you in there, he has to explain himself to someone who gets paid $11 an hour to pretend to be important. That's leverage. The library's warmth hit like a small kindness. The same security guard sat at the door, expression bored. We nodded at him, a silent negotiation of, we're not here to sleep in the chairs. He replied with, and I don't get paid enough to care. We found our way to the same corner as yesterday. Mark was there this time, slouched in a chair with an open book on his lap that he wasn't actually reading. He raised an eyebrow as we approached. Heard you upgraded enemies, he murmured. We talking cops, or the kind that can afford better coffee? The second kind, Finch said, with folders. Ah, Mark said, the quiet ones, my favorite. I picked a random book off the shelf again, something about architecture this time, and pretended to read. My eyes kept flicking up to the windows. Cars passed, buses, a bike, a white van, no black sedan. My shoulders stayed tight anyway. Maybe he meant what he said, Mark murmured. Tomorrow. Men like that like their schedules. If he said tomorrow, he might actually wait. What about the one watching him? Finch said quietly. I looked at him. What? He nodded subtly toward the opposite corner of the reading room. A man sat there, mid-40s maybe, in a worn blazer and cheap glasses. He had a notebook open, pen hovering above it. He wasn't writing. He was looking over the top of his glasses, past the stacks toward the entrance. Every time the door opened, his eyes flicked up. Not in boredom, in calculation. You think he's with... I started. If he were with your friend, he'd have better shoes, Finch said. But he's waiting for someone, and he's not here for the books either. Welcome to City Layers, Clay murmured. The Watchers have watchers. None of them care if we're warm as long as we stay in the background. I forced myself to look back at the page in front of me before I made it obvious. Lines about zoning laws blurred into nothing. Time stretched. People came in. People left. A kid laughed too loud until his mother shushed him. A printer whirred somewhere. We stayed. Eventually, staying felt more dangerous than moving. Let's go, Finch said finally. I don't like being predictable in buildings with only one entrance. We filed out, one by one. The security guard gave us the same non-committal nod. On the sidewalk, the air tasted like exhaust and old rain. No black sedan, no man with a folder. See? Finch said. Maybe he actually has a calendar. Gives you one more day to breathe. One more day to worry, I muttered. You'd do that anyway, he said. Might as well have soup while you do. We spent the afternoon moving, not in a straight line. Finch took us through neighborhoods he said were too boring for people with folders. Rows of small houses with sagging porches, an industrial strip that smelled like metal and old oil, a park where the benches were all broken. Why are we walking in circles? I asked finally. So if someone's tracking your pattern, they get dizzy, Finch replied. Also, you're less likely to run into the same patrol twice if you don't act like a bus route. By late afternoon, my feet hurt in that deep bone-bruised way. The sky was already thinking about getting dark again. We stopped near an overpass where the concrete columns were covered in layers of graffiti. Clay leaned against one, catching his breath. You don't have to keep up, I said. We can get you back to the river. He shook his head. River's not safer just because I know the shape of the rocks, he said. Besides, someone who remembers your name from a folder is more interesting than pigeons. For now. I sat down on the curb. Cars rushed over our heads, the sound a constant distant roar. Do you think he's watching right now? I asked. Probably not personally, Finch said. Men like that outsource their loitering, but he doesn't need eyes on you every second, just enough to predict where you'll be when he decides the conversation should happen. That's comforting, I said. Comfort is expensive, Clay murmured. Evening crept in slowly, turning the underside of the overpass from gray to shadow. Streetlights blinked on in staggered fashion, some failing, some buzzing. We need a place for tonight, I said. The thought of another night under a fire escape made my shoulders ache preemptively. Finch rubbed the back of his neck. Can't repeat last night, he said. Can't go back to the supermarket, can't go under the bridge unless you're eager to walk right into Tank's welcome committee again. And your friend with the sedan just burned the warehouse. What's left? I asked. Higher ground, Clay said unexpectedly. We both looked at him. Everyone forgets the roofs, he said. They're afraid of falling, or being seen, or they don't like stairs. But up is sometimes better than under. Fewer feet to trip over you. Finch considered that. You sure you can handle stairs, old bones? Can you handle not talking for 3 minutes while we climb? Clay shot back. Finch grinned. Fair. We followed him 3 blocks over to a squat building wedged between a laundromat and a shuttered storefront. The front door was locked, but the alley had a metal ladder bolted to the wall, the bottom rung just out of reach. Finch crouched, laced his fingers. Come on, hero, he said. Make yourself useful. I stepped into his hands, grabbed for the rung, pulled myself up. The metal was cold, rough under my palms. I swung one leg, hooked my foot, and pushed, body scraping the wall, until I got my weight onto the ladder. From there, I pulled the ladder down low enough for Clay to grab it. Finch climbed last, the ladder rattling under our combined weight. The roof was flat, covered in gravel and bits of trash. A low ledge ringed it. From up here, the city looked strange, less threatening, more like a map. Streets became lines, cars became pieces. We found a spot near a duct that hummed with warm air. Finch laid down a piece of cardboard he'd picked up somewhere along the way. Clay settled with a faint groan. This is better, I said, surprised. For now, Clay said, until he decides roofs are in his list of your spots. The sky above us was a darker blue now, bruising toward night. A plane blinked across it, going somewhere people like us didn't exist. I pulled my backpack into my lap, unzipped it to check, suddenly, irrationally, that everything was still inside. The key, the shirt, the 20, the stupid toothbrush. There was also a piece of paper that hadn't been there before. My heartbeat hitched. It lay flat against my folded t-shirt. A standard sheet, folded once, edges crisp, no logo, no heading, just the weight of intent. Finch, I said quietly. He was lying on his back, one arm over his eyes. If this is about you being out of clean socks, I can't help you. There's something in my bag, I said, shocked. That's usually how bags work, he replied. Something new, I said uncertainly. He dropped his arm, rolled onto his side to look at me. Show me. My fingers felt thick as I pulled the paper out and unfolded it. No letter, no greeting, just text, printed in the same tidy font I'd glimpsed in the folder outside the warehouse. Riverfront on the first day, Maple Church midday, supermarket loading dock at night, library midday, abandoned warehouse at night. Each line had a date and approximate time stamped next to it. The last line had an additional note, exited via back wall, alley, estimated companions, 2. Underneath, a fifth line had been added, current projected, a rooftop near 14th Eve. My breath caught. How? I started. He didn't write that after we got up here, Finch said. His voice had lost its usual lazy edge. It was very calm now, and that was somehow worse. That paper was already in your bag. He was in your bag, Clay said softly. Or someone was, between soup and now. I flipped the paper over with shaking fingers. On the back, in pen this time, not printed, a single line had been added in neat handwriting. Sleep well, Hubert. Tomorrow we talk. My vision tunneled for a second. The paper crinkled in my grip. He knew, I whispered. He knew we'd come up here. No, Finch said. He knew you'd go somewhere new, somewhere that felt out of reach. Doesn't have to be this exact roof. He's not a fortune teller, just good at math. He had to touch my bag, I said. He had to get this in there. I didn't feel. That's the point, Finch said. He wanted you to know he could be that close without you noticing. Clay leaned his head back against the duct, eyes closed. You thought the worst thing was being unseen, he murmured. Turns out being seen this clearly might be worse. The wind picked up, sending a shiver through the paper in my hands. He said tomorrow, I whispered. He keeps saying tomorrow. Opportunities, correcting, what I started. What happens if I don't show up for the conversation? Finch's gaze went to the edge of the roof, to the city beyond. Lights flickering on in windows, cars threading through streets. Then tomorrow, he said, stops being a choice and starts being a deadline. And day 4, Clay added, without opening his eyes, becomes the day you find out what men like that do when people ignore their calendars. I stared at the paper, at the neat print evaluating my life as locations and times, as if I were a delivery route. Under my fingers, the ink of the last handwritten line was just dry. Sleep well, Hubert. My body was exhausted, but suddenly sleep felt like the most dangerous thing in the world. Above us, the sky darkened fully. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, then faded. I folded the paper carefully, as if creasing it wrong might change what it meant, and slid it back into my bag. Tomorrow, he'd said. Day 4, I thought. If I lived long enough to call it that.